Okay, good evening. We're going to look at Parsha Terumah and, as well, some insights into the Megillah, from Megillah Esther. So I want to focus on one particular area in Terumah, and that you might have heard many times before, but I want to just address this particular area. Hashem says to Moshe, Daber b'nei Yisrael v'kuli Terumah, tell b'nei Yisrael they have to take from me Terumah, I want you to go and gather from everybody money. Basically, you have to gather donations from everybody because these donations are going to be used to build the temple, build the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and I want those people that are going to be doing this, first I want everybody to give, plus on top of that I want those that really want to give, Yidvenu Livo, those people that truly want to give with all their heart, those are the ones who you really want to take from. So everyone's going to have to give, but you want to be able to give to those that actually really want to give, which is an interesting concept because the average person doesn't necessarily want to really give money towards these types of things, but when a person starts looking outside themselves and realizing that their money actually creates legacy and can create bigger things, then you're actually able to do a whole lot more within the world. So within our 24-hour period that we have within our lives, there's so much that the individual can do, and there's so much more if that individual also uses that which he makes towards other holy things, it actually creates a lot more. So the opening line of the Mishkan, which is really what we'd call the paradigm for all future events that relate to that of Kedusha, of holiness within our lives, is this concept of being able to give. And a person has to see what they really like to give to. Each individual has something else that they like to give towards. Whether it's monetarily or non-monetarily, they all have something that is so very deeply special inside of them that really truly connects to them. We're going to see this a little bit more. But that's how it opens up. It tells us what we're supposed to gather, all those things that are needed for the Mishkan. And again, it's going to be coming from the people that are making it are entirely pure, and the people that are donating in general are also going to be at this level of purity. So this is an important thing to notice, that when it comes to how we build things, it's not just simply to collect, but there's a way you collect that which you give, if it comes truly from the heart, it actually has a greater sense of continuity when a person actually gives from their heart. Which means that there's a physical world that we live in, and then there's a spiritual world that we live in, which means that there are things that you'd want to do. We know there's a concept of a mitzvah, that if you want to do the mitzvah, you're unable to do it, that you could still get reward for that mitzvah. Because of the fact that spiritually you are deeply connected to something. So when it actually comes to fulfilling something within this world, you can fulfill it physically, you can also fulfill it spiritually. And when you have it all interconnected, then you see it's a tremendous development that actually occurs. So when a person gives, if they know they're already going to give, and then they give it fully, it really brings it to the highest level. So we're going to see those people in the Mishkan, the building, those that are Chacham Lev, those that really want to develop to make the tapestry or to make everything for the Mishkan itself. They're doing it because of this tremendous love that they have to want to be able to give and create a place for the divine presence. So too when it comes to money, the same idea. A person can actually give to that extent. I just wanted to jump in with a story that I told it to my class, and my wife told it to me yesterday, so you're hearing this like fourth hand, as I tell over the story that Diane Dunner said over last night. It's a story it's about money. And the story, Diane Dunner spoke last night to give a eulogy on Rav Aaron Leib Steinman, the Gadol Hador that just passed away at the age of 104. Rav Aaron Leib was extremely simple and extremely humble, did not want any praises. If anyone would praise him, he would get sick and nauseated by the fact that someone would try to give him honor and the like. He wanted to shun away from it as much as possible. He was on a flight seemingly to America. He was taking a world tour which started at the age of, I think, 92 or 93. He was here in Los Angeles about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. And on this flight, it was, I guess, a private jet of some sort. On this flight, a wealthy businessman came over to him and said, "Look, I'm feeling in a good mood. I would like to be able to I'd like to do whatever I can do for you right now. Is there something that you need money for? Something that you can do? I would be happy to do whatever you need right now. I'll be happy to spend it on you." This is just such an important lesson in the role of prayer itself. So he thought for a minute, like you and I would probably have like a dozen things, like what you're willing to spend, whatever money you want on me, I'm ready to go. Well, a house, I need my kids for this, I need whatever the things that could be. I need a school, hospital, whatever that I can do. Rabbi Aaron Leib was not interested in physical needs, and it was not something that he focused on. But here's what he said. He said, what do I need right now? I'll tell you what I need right now. We're on a flight, and I need to pray mincha. I need to daven. I don't feel like I'm going to have the proper intent, the proper kavanah while I pray right now. So what do I need right now? It would be best for me if we landed the plane, and we daven mincha off the plane, and then happy to go back.
Wow.
That's it. That's all I want. I just want to be able to daven mincha calmly, without having to be in the plane to be able to daven mincha. So that's what he did. The man took the plane down, and they landed the plane. He davened mincha and came back. So the story, obviously, for you and I, is like, what a waste of money, But in Rabbi Aaron Leib's mind, it's not that it's a waste of money. It's that I need to pray. If I need to daven right now and I'm not going to have proper kavanah, then what else is there worth in the world? What else is it? What do I need? So therefore, his line was, if I can pray right now, that would be great. It just gives us a lesson to us, like when we think of one day of prayer to the next, like I just did this yesterday, I did this morning, and he's thinking, what I did today or yesterday doesn't even compare to what I can possibly do right now, and this is worth all the money to be able to do that. Just a thought about how we think about those holy things that exist within our life.
Like money come and go, but Hashem forever, right?
Right? Okay.
So
I want to focus on one particular area, which you've heard the different aspects of it, but I want to share with you one general point in this, and that is going to be what the Psukim talk about. The general concept is, after mentioning all the items that are going to be used in the Mishkan, this whole chapter, this whole parsha, for the most part, is really talking about building this tabernacle. Everything that goes into the tabernacle, all the wood, all the tapestries, everything that's going to go into it, how we make the shulchan, the table, how we're going to make the altars, how we're going to make the aron, the ark, everything is going into this parsha. That's what it's all about.
They were in the desert, yes?
They're in the desert, right? Where do they get the wood from?
Money.
Huh?
Why they need money?
So that's a good question, right? They're going to need it for certain things. Let's say, for example, the ark is going to be needed to be laden with gold. So they need the gold. There's no paper money. There's just
they took a lot of gold from Egypt.
So they have all this, right?
Yeah,
most of the monies that they use, right?
They collected silver.
But so now everybody has it. Now everybody's wealthy, or some people are wealthy, right? And now we want to know what you're going to use it for. So they're collecting all of these things, so they have it in order to be used for the Mishkan itself, right? So at the end of this line, and I want you to make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell amongst you. So Rashi points out, Vastu the mikdash, I'm sorry, wrong one. Maybe not reading Rashi. Yeah, Vastu l'shmi beis kedusha. Make for me a house of holiness. This is what he wants. Okay, what God is requesting over here is Vastu the mikdash v'shachanti b'socham is going to be this place that you're going to enable me to dwell. Okay, so we're familiar with the concept that the Svarim discuss. It says, make for me a mikdash, a tabernacle, a temple, and I will dwell amongst you, in the plural. So what is the idea of you? Is that if you come together to build this, then I will dwell amongst each and every one of you. That is a general concept that I want to develop over here. So Nesiv Shalom, which we're going to focus on this evening, teaches us the following. And Nesiv Shalom is a Slonim Rebbe, Chasidus of Slonim, and he points out that every mitzvah that we have is an eternal mitzvah. If you have one of the 630 commandments, they're always going to be eternal. When God commands a mitzvah, that means it's not just for then, it's going to be for eternity. So what is the mitzvah of making for me a mikdash? Make for me this tabernacle. This tabernacle seems to be, maybe it's going to happen 3 times in a person's life, in whatever, throughout history. The one that they had the one they had in the desert, as he pointed out, and the Beis Hamikdash, the temples that they're going to have. That seems to be the basic function of what we're building over here. So how could it be that God is commanding us, in general, for all of perpetuity, that I want you to make for me this tabernacle? It's not something that is going to be applicable to most of us. There is a concept that Rashi points out. The Gemara points out in Sanhedrin But there's a concept that if you had this tabernacle built and something broke, so every time you make a new implement for it, you're fulfilling this mitzvah. That's great, it's wonderful, but it doesn't apply to us that often. Right? We don't have a tabernacle, we don't have a base mikdash, we don't have a temple. What are we actually going to do with this mitzvah? So it has to be that any mitzvah that's given is going to be extremely practical, and it's going to be relatable to our ultimate service and what our purpose is with God. So what the Nesiv Shalom presents is that there's a concept, as the Toldos Yaakov Yosef presents, is that, as you know, some of you know the general concept, but I want to hone in on this concept. The concept is that when it says, Vasuli Mikdash, I want you to make for me a mikdash, a dwelling place, it means it's going for every individual. What does that mean, every individual? It means that I want you to realize, a human being, I want you to realize that you are a person that's going to enable the divine presence to go through you. They said about Rav Simon yesterday that Rav Dayan Donner said over, this is again third hand from my wife, that there was a boy who came to visit Rav Steinman. Rav Steinman again was the Gadol Hador, the leader of our generation, passed away at 104, not long ago. How many weeks? 3 weeks ago, something like that. And someone came over and said, I want to go see Rav Steinman. They said, he's busy right now. He said, listen, I don't want to speak to him. I just want to see him. I don't want to speak to him. I just want to see him. What? Please, just allow me to see him. So he goes and sees him. He says, okay, thank you. So the man says to him, the Gabbai says to him, well, excuse me, you didn't want to speak to him, you just wanted to look at him. Why'd you want to look at him? He says, I'll tell you why. Because many, many years ago, when I was in the same base medrash, I was in the study hall with Rav Steinman. So he was a young man at the time. And I saw him studying day and night and day and night. And he limited himself in the food and drink and all the things that he had. And I went over to him and I said, as a young boy, I said, tell me, what are you studying for? All these laws, what are you studying for? So he said to me, I'm learning because I want to become a merkava l'shchina. I want to become how would I put it? Not a funnel, a channel for the divine presence. Thank you. A channel for the divine presence or chariot is what we usually translate, right? Channel for the divine presence to rest within this world. I want to have the opportunity that God will now come through me, not in a state of haughtiness, not in a state of honor, but rather that I want to be able to fulfill my purpose to enable that to happen. And he went and he studied day and night. And if you knew of the way he studied and how he basically was not interested in physical things that exist within the world. So this is what he told this boy many, many years earlier. So now, many decades later, this man comes and says, I want to be able to see Rav Steinman. Why? Because I want to see what it looks like to be a channel bringing the divine presence within the world. I want to see what the face of someone like that looks like. I saw him many years ago myself personally. I went to see him. It's an unbelievable experience. Like, you don't even realize, like, you're sitting in front of someone. I think at the time he was probably 97. It's like you don't even know what to say, what to do. But like the point is that you're in front of a person, a human being that has sanctified himself so much throughout his life, and especially we live, in a time when everyone can get their hands on anything and do whatever they want with whatever they have. And here's someone who basically separated himself, and you can sense that this is what it means to be a merkava l'shchina, to be a chariot or whatever, a tzina or a conduit to enable the divine presence to come into this world. A remarkable experience. So that's what this meant. I just want to see what it looks like to be like that. I want to be able to have a glimpse of what it means to see a gadol. If you haven't in your own lives seen someone of great stature like that, it's worth it to be able to see that great stature. They say about his funeral, I was showing it to my kids yesterday, about his funeral, there were hundreds of thousands of people at the funeral.
750,000.
Well, that was 750,000 people at the funeral.
But not like a real funeral, because they didn't know that.
So what happened in that funeral? He put out a small little paper of what his will was, what he wanted in his will. He said he only wanted like 10 people at his funeral, and this was not known. There was a previous funeral that happened with Rav Vosner, who was the head of the Beis Din in Bnei Brak. And at that funeral, unfortunately, a couple of people were trampled. Because there were also like 500,000 people at that funeral, and 2 people died. I believe it was 2 people that died from that funeral because they were just simply trampled to death.
Wow.
So So at this funeral, 750,000 people there. Only thing is, he put in his tzava, he put in his will, in his, what's it called, his, whatever, the way he wants his burial to be. He doesn't want anything, he wants no fanfare, he doesn't want anyone, he wants no eulogies. So they had one eulogy, that was by Rav Gershon Edelstein, who seemingly will be taking over. Rav Gershon Edelstein is 94 years old right now. And he wanted 10 people at his funeral. So his Gabbayim said to him, look, what do you want us to do? 10 people? Come on. Whether you believe it or not, you're the Gadol Hador. You're the leader of the generation. You're not going to have 10 people at your funeral. It's not going to be this way. They said, what do you want us to do? Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, at the same time, the police saw what happened at the last funeral, and they were concerned. They had to come up with another plan. So when they had Rav Aaron Leib in the ambulance after he passed away, the ambulance was supposed to stop at a certain point, and it just kept going slowly. And they thought that everyone gathered around. They thought that it was a different ambulance that was holding him, and the police at the high level, along with a couple of other people, were determined to take the coffin to the cemetery so it wouldn't cause this whole uproar that happened last time. And by the time they finished giving the eulogy, they started walking. Then they realized, then they found out that he's already there. He was already there. So if you look, they show like a helicopter picture of it. There's like 15 people at the funeral. And this is how he got what he wanted. He didn't want it. Eventually others came by for that. It's like people did working on different hands. I saw that video. Yeah.
And that's it.
So what's asked of us, what God is asking of us is, can you enable yourself to make yourself into a conduit that the divine presence will rest? That is what the mitzvah is. It's a very difficult mitzvah for most of us to imagine. But the fact is that this mitzvah happens on a regular basis within our lives. Every time we sanctify ourselves within a mitzvah, every time we withhold something that might be pleasurable or wrong for us, and we hold back even for a moment's time, at that moment, that's when we're actually sanctifying ourselves and fulfilling this mitzvah. Which means that what our goal is, we want to make into ourselves a mikdash. A mikdash means to sanctify, but Rashi points out a beit kedusha, a home of holiness. A home of holiness. This is what he wants of us. So this is a concept that's very difficult for people to grasp, because they can withhold from things. They want to diet, they want to refrain from certain things. We understand they can hold back from yelling. But to hold back in order to make yourself a conduit for the divine presence to come in, well, in other religions you'd have it. You'd have some element of meditation. You'd have some element of yoga that people would do to be able to get this type of divine light through them. But that is the concept over here, that when it comes to Vasuli Mikdash, it's for us to make this physical place, our life, into a Mikdash for Hashem, into an abode where we say like, wow, this is fitting for God. A lot of times in our own homes, we like to beautify our homes for these things. And the obvious question is, how much do we beautify ourselves? And so what the Nesiv Shalom points out, that there's two types of Mishkan that actually exist. Because the verse says, the verse basically mentions the concept that there are two types of Mishkan, that it says, let me just get over here. Let me see where he wants to go. And what he writes is, there's two types. One is the neshama. The neshama dwells inside the brain. It's your intellectual side, enabling your intellect to be able to retain and receive aspects of holiness for itself, which means even studying of Torah itself in an intellectual way is enabling the divine presence to dwell inside of ourselves over here, using our mind for holy things, for holy concepts, as opposed to using it for unholy ideas. And then there's another aspect, and that is that the nefesh and the ruach, the physical spirit that exists inside of us, that comes from the heart. So there's two aspects. One is one which develops from the mind, and the other one is which develops from the heart, which is what we would call the place of emotions. And therefore, there's two aspects as to how we actually have to develop ourselves. One is using our intellect for the sake of holiness, for the sake of Torah, for the sake of Chesed, other things like that. And the other one is using our emotions, guiding our emotions to do God's will and to allow God to have control over those aspects. Those parts of a mitzvah that a person does, which are relate to the neshama, which relate to the mind, which relate to the intellect, those things are on a continual basis. Your mind has the opportunity to continually flow in these areas. Those things, and those things that a person has to keep bringing up into their mind on a regular basis. So it's not so simple for us to do. Just think about this for yourselves. How well can we keep within our mind this opportunity that, I have God in my mind all day? Most of us don't do it. I don't know about you. Do you have God in your mind all day? I'm not going to point any fingers. But the truth is, for the most part, we do. If we actually connect to the physical things that we have within our life, we can actually pinpoint that there are many things to do. Let's say a person's focused on music. A person's focused on music, when you connect to the deeper levels of music, you realize there's a divine light that's being spread through this music. Whether it's 8 bars, correct? 8 notes in music?
An octave is 8, yeah.
An octave.
Actually 7. The 8 is the same as the first.
No,
7.
but an octave is 8.
No, but we're talking about 7.
So the 7, which 7 is represented by Teva, by nature. So what does 8 come in? Where does the number 8 come in music?
8 is the same note as it goes octave. It's the same as the first one, the same as the last one. Repeats. The whole, it goes by octave.
So, but there's no 9, is what I'm asking.
No.
So I'm asking, it is an 8.
But actually 7. 7
No, I understand. So there's 7.
8 is the same as the first one.
Good. So what you've just pointed out to me, is that there's 7, which represents Teva, the nature. 8, which is the same as the first, looks like the other 7, or looks like the first one. Mm-hmm. It's just part of this standard scale, but in essence, it's really something different. Why do I need an 8?
Why do you need 8?
You don't need 8, right? You just have a 1, right? And the first one.
8. Yeah, oct means 8, but the point is...
I'm asking the question, why do I need an 8th one? Why do I need an 8th note if it's just simply the same as the first note?
You don't need it. You just need 7.
Right, which means, but you have 8, correct?
You have more than 8.
And that's why I asked you if there's 9. And you said no.
There's no name for 9 or 7, right?
It is a name. You can say decimals, for example, it's a 10 or...
Yeah, but...
no. You can say... Because you know why? I'll tell you why. Because
tell me why.
The whole idea of the building a piano, they divided by 8 because it's 8.5 octaves. Divided by 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. That's the easier way to count it. But it has nothing to do with music. 7. Let's forget about piano. Let's say violin or different instruments.
Everything else is 7. Okay, 7. So only piano is the only one that has 8?
It doesn't have 8. It's just divided by 8.
Divided by 8, excuse me. Yeah, sorry. Okay, fine. Could be.
Yeah.
Okay, either way, so 7, and when you're dealing with music, 7 represents that of nature, that everything flows into the realm of nature.
Number 7 is a lot. It's a really
correct.
significant number.
Significant number, right?
7 knows what it's 7. A lot of things is 7 in Torah.
Yeah, we understand that. I'm saying 7 is a representation of how nature is going to exist. Is the realm of nature.
Days, right?
I'm just pointing out to you that as you're playing music and you recognize that you're playing on a scale of 7, then that means that you're also within the realm of understanding Torah. That everything can be elevated that way.
It's a really simple thing to connect to the music. Music is much more...
Of course it's deeper. The point is that anything that anybody does has an opportunity to sanctify. Which means that whatever you're doing within your life, you have an opportunity to sanctify in the highest of levels.
What if you engineer?
Same thing. Same thing with an engineer. Why? For 6 days God commands us to build. He commands us to create. Why? Because He wants us to be creators within this world. He wants us to actually develop. So if you're not developing anything, if you're just sitting there watching TV all day, you're not developing anything. You're not developing your mind. You're not developing anything else. You're just developing a potato chip habit, right? You're not nothing more than that. But if you're actually using your mind to do something, that's in the positive aspect of you shall 6 days you shall work and create. Because God put us in this world to actually be creators. And that's the relationship we build with Him, so that when the 7th day, when Shabbos comes and we stop, and we say, okay, now I'm showing that you're the creator. But that's
in artists, you have 7 colors in a rainbow.
Okay, very good.
And
yeah.
some cities were built in
Skittles.
7 hills. Some cities like Rome was built, like a lot of cities.
Okay, all these ideas, right?
Yasha has a question. Go, Yasha.
So
what I is this actually true? What I learned, right? And I don't know, one of the music classes I took or something like that. So like the Greeks, they did the math and they experimented with the physical world, right?
Yeah.
Oh, me? I think okay, that's fine. So anyway, so this guy, ancient Greece, he took a string, right? He put it on two nails, right? And a lyre, whatever you call this instrument, right? And he went in, the strings would sing, right? Mm-hmm. So he would divide it in half. And he would pull this string and then pull this string. And what he got is exactly an octave. He got this sound here is the same sound as this, only an octave higher.
That's absolutely correct. Acoustically, this one vibration of the string
is
double all the time and go every 8 months.
It gives you an octave.
That's how the piano built. So acoustic, so the string, when it's very great, then it goes double vibration.
So how did they get 7 in there? But it's not actually 7. There are
because it's a
half tones.
Johann Sebastian Bach decided to divide it into 7 parts because it's on the topic. I'm sorry, you don't have to record it. It's on the record.
No, finish.
So separate clavier.
Shvatim, the 12 Shvatim, 12 tribes. Okay, so in the Sefer Reishis Chacham explains the following concept. He explains the idea. I want you to understand this is very important for us. So we have this concept that it's a mitzvah that we have to enable ourselves to be a merkava, to be, as we mentioned, a conduit for God to dwell inside of us. When a person looks at this concept, says the Sefer Reishis Chacham, when you understand this, then you should now develop in your heart the sense of love that a person should have. It says, wow, how could it be that I, a simple human being, has an opportunity to enable God to dwell inside of me? So this is a concept that we're not used to thinking about for ourselves. We think about it for great rabbis and for very holy people, but the Torah says it's not about that. It's about every human being has an equal opportunity to be able to have God dwell inside of them. And God dwelling inside of them doesn't make you into a magician. It doesn't make you into anything else. It means that you now have godliness inside of you. The way that's going to happen is by you making yourself into somebody who's worthy of having holiness dwell inside of you. And this is what the concept of Asuli Mikdash is really all about. So what is my job? What is our job? Our job is to be able to take good stock upon myself and say, wow, this is special. Extremely powerful idea that I have an opportunity to do things. That's why when we sit and pray, many times people say, why should I daven? I don't see them answered. I don't see this. I don't see that. The answer is, are you kidding me? Every time I pray, I am now making a conduit. I am the conduit that's enabling God to come down into this world, into the physical realm, and now do something amazing in the world. My prayer is causing greatness to happen within the world. So the way we do this, says in Nesiv Hashem, the way we try to make ourselves into a conduit is from the beginning of the Parsha. The beginning of the Parsha told us, V'yichli truma, take from me a truma, take from me some sort of donation. What does that mean? Every individual has something that drives them to want to do good in the world, to want to do great within the world. We know even the most evil of people, they have something that's driving them, only they're skewed. And if they'd be pushed in the right direction, if their mind would have been pushed in the right direction, in many cases they were just totally lost. But everyone has a drive to do something that's very powerful, that's burning inside them that they want to do. Is whether it's a particular mitzvah or something else that you have something that guides us, I want to do this. It doesn't matter how old the person is. That what that means is there's a truma, there's a donation that you want to give. There's something that you want to give to this world. And you need to figure that out. A lot of times people think, no, only if I have money could I do this and that. It's not true. There are particular aspects of our own midos, of our own character that we have, that if we focus on those things, that could be something we're actually giving to the world. It could be that I'm a person, let's say a person says, I'm a person that wants to smile at everybody and really make everybody happy. That's a tremendous gift you're bringing to the world. Let's say a person that wants to make sure that everything is always in order. So that's a tremendous gift you're giving to the world. You have to figure out how you're going to be doing this and how you're going to guide this for the sake of Hashem. So that is one of our jobs, is to be able to realize for ourselves that I have a truma to give. I have a donation to be able to give to the world. And that donation is going to make me into this conduit to bring God into the world, this godliness into the world. Every amazing thing, how many billions of people in the world, every individual has an opportunity for this. Of course, this is a specific mitzvah geared over to the Jewish people, but within the, whatever the number is, 15 million Jewish people that we have within the world, each one of us has some aspect that's going to be a conduit that's going to create great holiness that exists in the world. It's a powerful experience. If you've ever had any type of experience, you feel like you worked on something, you brought out your best, and you use it for the sake of God, it's an unbelievable experience that the Jew has to be able to give over. And we know that within our lives, we're brought here with what we call a toolbox. Each one of us is given certain tools, and what's in your toolbox is not in my toolbox. That's why you play music and I don't, right? Every one of us has different things within their toolbox. That's why you have half notes, or 12, whatever, and she's stuck with 7, or 8, or 15, right? That every one of us is given certain tools, and those tools are to fix things. I know for myself, someone gave me a bunch of tools. I have a toolbox, they gave me a bunch of tools. I'm looking at things like, I don't even know what this is. How do you look it up? It's just a tool. There's nothing on it. So every time I have something else I need to fix, I'm like, maybe this one will do it. I have no idea what this thing is. It's like a half a wrench that kind of goes like this, and it doesn't really turn anything. So I'm just going to hold it for that day when it's usable. But I have no idea what that tool is used for, because someone gave it to me, and it could be for plumbing, could be for electrical. I have no clue what the thing is for. But we're each given toolboxes, number 1, and number 2, we're also given broken pieces that we need to fix within our lives. We have those things that are broken we need to fix, and sometimes our toolbox will fix those things, and sometimes we have to go to somebody else's toolbox to fix those broken items that we have. And our tools many times will be fixing somebody else's broken tools. But each one of us is given these gifts to be able to figure out how I can be what we call a merkava to the Shekhinah, how I can be a conduit to God's presence here within this world. This is a tremendous idea for each of us. When a person now focuses and says, you know what, I see I have gifts. I see I have problems, but I see I have gifts. Those are things that I want to develop even more, and that's when you know you've now enabled yourself to have the divine presence actually come through you.
So that is, when you reference these tools, let's say you're going to have some repository there. Somebody's going to ask, does anybody has this tool? You say, I have the tool. You give this tool, and you give it to some, and this tool is given to somebody else.
No, but it's not the way, because it's not someone saying they don't have this tool. Someone says, anyone how to fix this? And you say, I know how to fix this.
But I'm saying, this is like brachos, right? It goes up, and after that it goes to somebody else, right? This kind of stuff.
I don't know if you lose it right away. Sometimes, when you accomplish certain things within your mazel, whatever, your toolbox, so then you now are worthy of having new tools brought down to you. I don't know if you lose it necessarily. Could be something
necessary. It can be returned to you too.
For your return, yeah. So that's one of the concepts. So when it comes to making ourselves this place for divine presence, it means that we are now the ones that are bringing that in. And every time we change something in the world, whether it's personal or to somebody else, it really makes a difference. So when the rest of the world talks about tikkun olam, changing the world, that tikkun olam can happen in your own room by yourself. And we see this with Yosef, we see this with Esther. These are private moments that they have. And, the world has changed. So you have your own private moments where you can actually sanctify God's name and therefore make yourself a conduit for God. But he also goes on to explain a part B of this entire thing, and that is, V'yasu mikdash. If you want to make yourself a conduit to God, then it doesn't just simply mean that you're going to do a particular commandment. It doesn't simply mean that you're going to do whatever thing that drives you. How do you explain conduit?
Like a passageway.
Explain conduit in Russian.
Going down to.
Знаешь, почему идешь conduit?
Как туннель, типа.
Like a wire.
He knows electricity, but...
That's why I said like a провод.
Conduit.
No, это нет. Это как больше план.
Air conditioning duct is a conduit. It is just...
something that enables something to transfer through it. Right? So if we want God, who's in the spiritual realm, to come into this world, I make myself something holy so that God will now transmit through me. Right? That's the general concept. Okay? So, what he points out that there's another concept is that if you want to be asuli mikdash, the way you make a sanctuary for God, that word of mikdash, that sanctuary, is actually the word of Shabbos. That Shabbat or Shabbos is the ability for the Jew to sanctify something in time, and that's actually going to enable God to come through. There is a concept that we have that the Mishkan is a place, so you're building a physical place of sanctity, but whenever we're sanctifying God through time, such as the holidays that we have, or perhaps even Shabbos, that's another way that we bring God into this world. So the concept means that when a Jew works for 6 days a week So he's not really connected that much to God, even though before we said he's bringing God into everything. But you're not necessarily feeling this, you don't necessarily recognize this. But when you are working throughout the week and then suddenly Shabbos you say, you know what, Shabbos, I want to make my home a place where God can dwell. And that's the whole concept of actually making all the food and whatever things that we do for our Friday meals or our Shabbos meals, is that we're now saying that this is like we have a guest coming over. It's as if God is coming over with us on these days. And on Shabbos, we separate ourselves from all the physical things that we're dealing with, the way we speak, the way things that we read and the like. Why? Because with myself and time of Shabbos, that's how the conduit actually exists. And therefore, the human being, the Jew in particular, has the ability to bring God into this world specifically on Shabbos. That Shabbos becomes a mishkan for us. It becomes this abode that we're able to run away from the rest of the week and come to this place in order to make the divine presence rest over here. There is a concept that the Svarim talk about, that during the rest of the week, the divine presence, godliness that exists within the world, is in Golos, is in this place of exile. That place of exile is a place because you don't see God. You're not able to recognize the greatness of what God is during the week. And then once a person gets into the world of Shabbos, and once they start experiencing Shabbos on a higher level, then that means the divine presence will also develop with us and come down with us as well. So when we say in the Torah, Zachar Yom Shabbos Zakach, a person should remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, you should at least remember at this point. What are you remembering to keep Shabbos holy? Remember that your mind can be sanctified to enable the divine presence to come down. So the concept that we have over here is, in the ends of the concept over here, is V'asuli mikdash, means that when a person makes themselves and their environment a place where God is going to develop, then you have a promise. The promise is, if you're going to change your world, or you're going to change the way you think about things within the world and who you are within the world, then you have no worry, then God is certainly going to dwell inside of you. And therefore you've elevated your physical world into the world of spirituality. So it's a concept that really requires work, because there's a lot of fluff being spoken, but there's a lot of work that's being done. And the work that's being done is, one, a person to recognize that he's a godly human being, that she's a godly human being. She has tremendous gifts to give this world, and that when connected properly, within every bit of Torah and mitzvot, a person can connect to so many deeper things. It's interesting, I saw a few relatives that had this week, wonderful, wonderful people. They grew up religious, and they're not religious anymore. But they're very spiritual, and they're very much into all different self-help and meditation and all these other types of healings and other things like that, about working on the soul and all these things, developing themselves. And I said, look, this is all in the Torah. You know that it's all in the Torah. The only problem was they were burnt the way they were taught. They were taught in a rigid way that didn't give them the ability to see what all of these mitzvot are really all about. They didn't understand, when you do this, you do this. But really what God tells us, when you keep Shabbos, when you keep all these other mitzvot, you're bringing the world to the highest level of fulfillment. They were never taught these things. They were just taught to study, to learn. And so it was very distant from them to be able to find this. But that which they're working on right now, which is like, they want to go through every bit of self-help, every bit of emotional help, spiritual help, all these things that they're doing through, is the same idea, but they're just going about it in a backhanded way, and hopefully they'll maybe find how the Torah actually gives you that in the first place. But it's all there, it's just that many times it's couched in rigidity of things that we don't necessarily know how to actually handle in the proper way. But this is one of the concepts that a lot of times people, last week's Parsha is Parsha Mishpatim, all laws upon laws. Every law you have to do, you do this to a person, that to a person, all these different things are laws. And a lot of times a person forgets about what the purpose of all these things are all about. So you have two types of people. You have the people that like to be in the global area. Yeah, I believe in God. Yeah, I know God exists. I understand concepts, but I'm not really ready to do day-to-day nitty-gritty things that you're requiring of me, what we call Jewish law. And then you have the other people on the other side of the spectrum that they're doing day-to-day nitty-gritty Jewish law every second that they're doing, but they almost don't have a concept that God exists and that God is around them and their belief in God. What do you mean? Aren't they doing everything every day? Of course they believe in God, but it's not something that they're focused on. They're focused on, chiseling out a piece of wood, but they don't realize that piece of wood is part of some grand masterpiece. They're just doing little notch by notch by notch. They don't see the big thing. And this is where we have to bring both sides and marry them two together. You have to be able to have the greater concept of God, and you also have to have the minutia concept that's going to enable that to happen. So that's why some of the commentaries explain that Parsha Terumah, this one about building the Mishkan, comes right after all the interpersonal laws, every nitty-gritty law, every single individualized law. We say, well, hold on. Yes, you got to do all these things, but not so fast. Remember, there's a bigger picture. The bigger picture is you need to let God dwell amongst you. So even if you're fulfilling all these laws and doing what you're supposed to do, but if you don't realize, if you don't feel God in your life, then you're going to be missing something big. And it's so hard for us to really bring these two together, but both sides need to come together to be able to recognize this, that we have to bring that aspect together, that you can believe in God, feel God, and yet at the same time do all the mitzvot that bring that all together. So that's one of the major concepts. We're going to